So, Bullet Train is a heist film, I guess. It's an ensemble heist film, an all-star ensemble heist film, if you want to call it that. Where it's basically you throw a bunch of quirky characters together. They're all kind of seeking the same thing. There's some robbery, there's some murder, and there's some silly stuff that goes on. And at that level, I think of just having just this cavalcade of actors all just gallivanting about this bullet train and just getting into all sorts of weird and wild action, it mostly works. It comes about as advertised. So there's a few characters we follow here, but definitely the central character we follow is Brad Pitt playing Ladybug, a code name that he's been given because he thinks it's supposed to be like an unlucky term. And I do like how they set up Brad Pitt's character as like this assassin who's trying to reform himself. Basically, he doesn't want to favor killing people anymore. Like if he has to, he'll do it. But he doesn't want to use guns as much, and he just wants simple jobs. And this current job he's on seems simple. Just, board a bullet train in Tokyo, find a suitcase, take it off. That's it. That's all you have to do. Of course, it won't be that simple. We know it won't be that simple, because there's a whole bunch of other characters thrown into the mix. You have Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Tangerine and Brian Tyree Johnson playing Lemon. And they are a brother assassins. They were raised as brothers, and I believe at one point they're referred to as twins, even though they look nothing alike. And they have their own quirky personalities as well. Like Tangerine's a little bit of like a hot-headed person, so easy to play off of him. And then you have Lemon, who's obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. and this is like an adorable running gag that I feel like some audiences might get tired of, but I could not get enough of it, where basically Lemon is trying to like place labels on everyone to kind of like relate them to Thomas the Tank Engine. So throughout the film, he's trying to find out, who's like the bullheaded one that you got to watch out for. So who's the Diesel, basically. So throughout the film, he's just trying to figure out who's the Diesel of the train. So they're involved with this because they're protecting like a mobster while at the same time coming into possession of the suitcase. Then you also have another character after the suitcase called the Prince, played by Joey King. She has mafia ties as well. She's puts on like the guise of a schoolgirl, but she's also very clever with weapons and bombs that she can manipulate others to do her bidding. You also have Andrew Koji playing Yuchi, who is a father who's seeking revenge for mobsters hurting his son. And he gets roped into this mess, and all these characters basically collide. And then you have like a whole bunch of other characters thrown into the mix as well as the film keeps going on. So you've got Michael Shannon, you've got Benito Ocasio, you've got Sandra Bullock, Zazie Beetz, Logan Lerman, and even some surprise ones I didn't expect, like if I told you what character Ryan Reynolds' character played in this, you would not believe me. And you would not suspect him. Also, props for using Channing Tatum as, like, just a passenger. Like, he doesn't really have much of any kind of contribution to the film, other than thinking that everyone wants to have sex with him. So, and all the characters, they do have very much, like, a gimmick to them. Which, it feels like their gimmicks could wear out fast, but I feel like they're played up just enough to the point where you kind of get used to them and comfortable that you're not as bothered by all their little quirks. I do like how they kind of vary it up, where you're not quite sure where these characters will come into play and how long they'll last. Like at one point, I won't reveal which character it is, but there's one character who, before they even get on the train, we get their entire backstory. We learn about their childhood, how they grew up, how they learned to kill, how they formed a romance, and how they lost that romance, and how they became a person bound for revenge, and they've come on this train, and they're gonna get bloody vengeance. And they're killed within 2 minutes. So there's very much a lot of, like, subversion here. You also have characters who have little gimmicks with, like, the weapons they wield, or like one of them uses poison. They all have like little gimmicks where it's like, it almost feels like this could be like a superhero film where they all have their own little weird traits to them. and it mostly works. And I think it's mostly just because there's a fast paced nature, but also like a fun aspect where the characters have genuine chemistry that comes off on screen. Like Brian Tyree Henry has this like effortless charm to him, where it's like he doesn't have to put too much work into like these ridiculous lines that are just fun on their own, and it makes it work. Where you're kind of pulling for him. You hope that he'll come out perfect in the end in this. Other characters, I do like the fact that even though there's a lot of like winking and quirkiness, there's also characters who are taking this straight and seriously that do kind of switch things up and let you know that yeah, there's serious stakes going on here. Particularly Andrew Koji. Like Koji's performance is 100% earnest. He's not winking at the camera. He's not doing anything silly. He is playing this straight as a father bound for revenge. And to an extent, even Michael Shannon's character has a little bit on that, but which is a little bit surprising because Michael Shannon, I'm kind of used to seeing like going off a little bit with his madness, and he does a little bit here. But I was surprised how much more restrained he was in this film. It's very brutal. It's very silly. There are aspects where I feel like the comedy is like playing it a little bit fast and loose here. Like you really do have to accept the fact that nobody else on this train is getting suspicious that there's a lot of fighting going on. Like at one point, Brad Pitt and Brian Tyree Henry get into a fight in a quiet car. And basically they're trying to cover up the fact that they're fighting, but also try to be quiet at the same time. That this woman who keeps shushing them doesn't take notice of the fact that they have scars and they're kind of bleeding here. I guess she doesn't care. I guess maybe like these exchanges on bullet trains are just like kind of like a common thing because it's like, just look, I don't care if you guys are fighting each other and slamming each other's heads into the walls and like trying to like shoot each other under the table. Just keep it quiet, you know? Even like you kind of think like they have to be, because there's even a moment where like a fight is halted just by one of the people on the train coming by with snacks. It's like she interrupts the fight just saying like, hey, you guys want snacks? No? You good? Oh, you want water? Okay, fine. All right, I'll get out of your hair. Keep doing whatever you're doing. Where you kind of have to like suspend a little bit of disbelief on that level. Eventually, though, like, you know, they do get everyone off the train so that when we can have like the big explosive showdown where things literally go off the rails, it's a little bit more believable. A little bit. It's still very much a farce, and I think you kind of got to know that going into it. Otherwise, you're kind of going to be questioning it the whole time. It's like, how are all these assassins on this train, and how are they all getting away with this? But yeah, there's some cute moments here. I do feel like that, though, that, you know, this is definitely going to be like a bit of a test for some people to see how much they can endure the dark comedy at play here. Because I think it kind of like wears out a lot of its fire by the end of the film. Especially when, like, because, like, they have, like, the silliness of, like, revealing the backstories of a character where they get their own typography and a cool introduction and stuff like that. And by the time, like, the last introduction you get is you get a backstory of a bottle of water. Like, it gets its own title card and everything, and you're kind of like, okay, I think you've exhausted this bit. I think you kind of got to move on here. And thankfully it does. There's enough going on within this film that I feel like it works. I do like the dialogue, too. The dialogue feels natural, where it's not just like characters will just accept that, okay, this is going to be your backstory time, or, oh, this is going to work, you're going to make your empty threats, and this is where you're going to make revenge. You could tell that, like, these are characters who are very much aware of that, especially with, like, Brad Pitt's characters. Just like, yeah, I've heard the allegory story you're about to tell. Like, yes, I know you're bound by revenge. I've been down this road before. So having a little bit of that knowing nature is very refreshing. In addition to all like the twists and turns that come with this, there's a fair amount, like, even though there's a lot of like twists that are kind of like telegraphed early, you can see coming, they're fast enough where it's like you're not as bothered by it. That even when like there are some surprising moments where like you think characters are dead and then they're not, like there's some fake outs. There's surprises about which character runs into who and who's involved here. Not to mention, especially when you get to the third act, there's a lot of like almost kind of like left field twists that are thrown into that. Thankfully, they're just small stuff. Like there's Ryan Reynolds' character who's just thrown in just at the end, just in case you weren't surprised enough. Here's another little surprise for you. So on that level, with just the speed of this film and the quirkiness and the dark comedy and the exceptionally bloody violence that happens here, I think on that level, with all things combined, it mostly works. I feel like by the end, it kind of wears out its welcome and saying, okay, kind of got to wrap this up a little bit here. I see what you're doing, but it's the quirkiness is wearing off. You kind of got to speed this up a bit. So for the most part, as an all-star action ensemble with a heist angle, it works. There's enough going on where I was never once bored with this film. And it's just a lot of fun.